Hi viewers, I hope everybody is fine. After a long gap, I am posting this video uh, in forensic science field, in another video related to the question documents field. Today we are going to discuss about examination of paper. What is a paper? Paper is one of the important evidence in case of forgeries and counterfeits, and paper is available in abundance in the market and is one of the most important writing surfaces. Before to the innovation and before to the industrial revolution, the papers were not being found abundantly, before to which we have to, if we go to the prehistoric period, the great scriptures were seen in either on palm leaves or on stones or on any metal sheets. But thanks to the modernization and industrial revolution, because of which we are able to receive the new technology, because of which we are able to use the papers. So probability of finding different types of paper in different cases of crime related to documents are more as the technology is developed. Paper is made of different processes. So it can be said that paper can be distinguished from each other on the basis of different papers, and it should be done by using scientific methods which provide solid evidence in the detection of paper. Some papers are rough, some are smoother, some are lined, some of them are plain, and some of them have a texture, some of them have a color, some have a dull color, some have a bright color, some have the ingredients of the paper differs, some of the paper texture are different. So all these things makes paper unique. So all these varieties of paper provide some sort of uniqueness to them and makes it available for its identification or examination in forensic laboratory. This uniqueness of paper can be basis of the identification of paper by different methods that we are going to study in this video. As mentioned earlier, some of the cases in which paper fire plays as an utmost importance for solving the cases. For example, the age of a document. For example, the document which has been registered will be in 2005, but which the date of the document has been written as 1902. But when we observe the document, the texture of a document, paper composition, chemical composition of paper, everything is of modern days technology. So why the difference in paper can be found which 1902 to 2005, which is very easily available resource for examination. Whether the paper is identical with or different from other papers of the same document. So this is the second question where we have to identify whether the paper is identical with the document which has been given for analysis or different from other papers. With the watermark, we have to examine the watermark of the papers to find out whether it is genuine or a forged one, and for examples of receipt, agreements, and all the judicial revenue documents, where we have to observe and identify the genuinity of the paper. Paper is made up of cellulose fiber in the form of compact sheet with uniform thickness. So there is a uniform thickness throughout the paper has been consistently followed. In very ancient time, when India was ruled by kings at the time, leaves, as I said, leaves were used like Bhojpatra and palm leaves. All these leaves were used for writing the documents, and then it came to the metal sheets, where metal sheets were utilized for writing the documents. Even if you see the freedom fighters in the initial 1947-1950s, the freedom fighters were given Tamarapatra, which means the document or certifications of the freedom fighters has been given on copper plates. That a copper sheet which is look like a plate, and the document is most important. Even such documents can also be examined, but when it comes to the paper, we are very strictly following the examination of paper in documentation or documents examination. Some basic knowledge about paper development and its manufacturing. Before getting into the examination of paper, we have to know how the paper has been developed and what is the stages of paper which has been evolved as a modern day paper, and what are all the chief ingredients which we can classify it, and how we can identify the papers. The first modern paper production was done after 1843 with the help of a mechanical engineer or a scientist named Keeler. So only after his contribution the mechanical papers, that is the machine made papers, were improvised and started for production. In 1864, the first chemical treatment processes of paper was started. Before to that, there was no any chemical processes. It was only the natural process and only the mechanical pressing of the papers. But after 1864, calcium bisulfate got developed, and this calcium bisulfate utilized for chemical treatment process of the paper making. In 1884, the same chemical processing was refined by Hall, and he utilized the same sodium sulfate instead of calcium bisulfate. He utilized the sodium sulfate for refining the process of paper. There are number of substances which can be added to make a paper nowadays, but for our convenience we categorize them as follows. Generally, the papers are made out of these following things. The first one is the paper made out of rag, that is, which includes cotton, hemp, linen, or any other jute, something like that, natural byproducts. And the second one is wood. The wood pulps which were utilized for preparing the paper, like bamboo, coniferous tree, pine, fir, etc. And then straw fibers, the fibers which are made out of grass straws, we call it as a straw fiber. For example, rice, wheat, oats, sugarcane straws, and even race straws. These straws are being utilized for preparation of paper. So the quality of paper can be improved by addition of some sizzling and loading agents, which help in developing the cellular strength and required weight of the paper. So the cellulose plays the major role in the strength and endurance of the paper. If cellulose were not added, the paper will not have such quality and it does not have weight. So general examination protocol. Before starting the examination, the following protocols are must, and it has a significance in examination of a paper. The first, color of a paper should be determined by comparing it from the color chart. We have a color chart for the paper examination, the colors which are being produced for the papers. So we have to compare the paper with the color chart. Then the weight, we have to know the weight of the paper. For example, common papers approximately weigh 1.9 to 8.7 gram per square meter. So we call it as the paper will be weighed on a per square meter area. So where the papers in a common paper which we are using on and off, the regular papers in books or in general printing purposes, that paper weighs around 1.9 to 8.7 gram per square meter. There can be difference in the limit of 2.5% only from the samples. So it can vary up to 2.5%. So it is from 1.9 to 8.7. So it is 2.5% variable. It can be either more or less, but the approximate weight on an average will be between 1.9 to 8.7 gram per square meter. Thickness, when we talk about the thickness, we speak about the GSM, 100 GSM, 80 GSM, 70 GSM. The same thing, grams per square meter, where we speak about the thickness of the paper when we will just measure it with the GSM, calling 70 GSM paper means which has a paper thickness, and using paper calipers we will analyze the thickness of the paper. Then ash residue, we have to also check the ash residue like cellulose, cotton, jute, sun and deciduous fibers composed paper have a ash residue of 0.4 to 1.5%. Pulp of straws and cellulose made paper have ash residue of 2 to 6%. For rice paper, this weight 14 to 15%. The paper which have the common origin may have a difference up to 4 to 5%. So the microscopic examination, the ratio of fibers and the distribution of these fibers throughout the paper is same in the papers of same batch. From microscopic study of paper, we can also know about the structure of fibers present in the paper. When we are talking about the fibers, it is one of the most important feature. While as I have already said about the different fibers which are being utilized in papers. For example, it may be a rice straw, or it may be a sugarcane straw, or it may be a wheat straw, or any coniferous trees like pine or fir, or even the bamboo cellulose or bamboo pulp. So we have to analyze what type of fiber is being utilized, because when the paper is prepared, there is only one sort of pulp will be utilized. There will not be any adulterant in a pulp. But the pulp may be adulterated when it comes to the recycling paper, where the recycle, that is used paper, can be recycled, but such paper will not come into the document examination, because those papers are of not much of use in judicial processes or in day-to-day processes. Those papers will have only the scribbling pads or like rough books, or even such recycled papers are being utilized for school notebooks nowadays. So the next point is the character of paper. It can be determined by the degree of beating, the steady amount of the fibers. When we instantly beat the paper, we can know the character of the paper, at what the breaking point is. The fluorescence, two papers can be compared under ultraviolet rays light for the comparison of a fluorescence, the fluorescence value of the paper. Then the watermark. There are different types of watermarks are being introduced in India. For example, if it is a judicial paper, we can see the logo of Indian emblem, that is the faces of lion, three faces of lion in a judicial and a non-judicial. And even if you see the watermark of a currency note, you can see the watermark of Mahatma Gandhi. In older note, it was the Ashoka emblem, that is a three-lined face. Loading and sizing agents. The first, we will talk about the sizing agents, like the sizing agents like rosin, starch, gelatin, aluminum hydroxide and synthetic polymers are being used to stop feathering of ink in the paper. When we are studying the handwriting analysis or ink spread pattern, these sizing agents plays a major role in identification of ink analysis or the paper analysis. So the identification of these sizing agents are very useful. Apart from the feathering of ink, it also helps to provide cellular strength to the paper. This sizing agents provides strength to the paper so that the paper will be more strong. And loading agents are used to make paper smoother and non-transparent. They are also known as the fillers. The loading agents are like which are used for smoothing the paper. If, as I said, the textures of a paper, the loading agents can also be called as a fillers. and coloring matter. If the paper have been colored by using some dye or pigment, then the paper can be subjected to TLC for the detection of that particular dye or pigmentation. So the TLC examination will reveal what sort of dyes has been utilized to bring that color in that paper. Other evidences like any fingerprinting or any other secondary evidences which are found on the documents will also be useful for examination and analysis of the document. So when we talk about the paper examination, the following are the most important one, like raw material, weight, density, thickness, color, watermarks, age, fluorescence, paper properties and fiber seals. These are all the major things which we have to keep in our mind for its examination. The first point in examination of paper is appearance. The appearance of the paper is most useful in identifying or examination of the paper. The first point in which while examining the appearance will be the markings. The markings like punch marks, staple marks or indentations on a paper should be marked, and the location of such marks should be recorded and maintained for the further analysis. And the second one is the edges of the paper. The edges of the paper should be properly examined utilizing low power microscope or with magnifying glass to verify whether the edges have been torn or cut using any razor, which will yield us some details regarding the office cuts, whether it has been cut from a company or a production cut, or if it has been made by any person, an individual person, one who has made any changes in that paper. And then dimension of the paper should also be noticed very carefully. The surface texture of the paper under analysis should also be studied carefully. As we have already spoken about the sizing agents and the loading agents, we have to completely study the surface structure of the paper, and the number and the position of folds present, if any, should be noticed. If there is any foldings is found in a paper, we have to carefully how many folds have been made to be noted, and it should be noticed carefully. The second point, the watermark identification. The watermark is one of the most important aspect of the paper study, as it can also be forged. The following discussion will provide you how to distinguish artificial watermark from the genuine one. In artificial watermark, the paper will not be thinner in the area of watermark, because the thinning of watermark can only be caused in the paper at the times of manufacturing. Sometimes an artificial watermark is made by applying some acid in the appropriate area to make the paper comparatively thinner, and sometimes a watermark is made by applying some oil or grease on a metal block and pressing it again against the paper to make it comparatively more transparent. In the later cases, the forgery may be detected by treating the watermark area with dilute caustic solution, which would obliterate or dim the artificial or fake watermarks. Then the third one is identification of the fibers present in the paper pulp. As we have already said, the types of fibers which has been utilized in the papers, which may vary from the natural fiber to the man-made fibers. Even some of the documents have optical fibers, so we have to identify the different fibers present in a paper pulp, which can be done by microscopic examination. The fragment of paper under analysis should be treated with 1% of sodium hydroxide. This is done by separation of the fibers of the paper. Once the fibers get separated, they are placed on the slide, and then a small drop of Herzberg's reagent is added to it. This prepares the fiber on the slide microscopic examination. The following fibers are generally used in the paper industry. Wood fibers, as I already said, which are being they are obtained from pine trees, deciduous trees like eucalyptus, chestnut trees, or even the bamboos. And textile fibers may be utilized, and like hemp, flax, cotton, etc., jute, etc. Starch fibers like rice, wheat, oats, and rye, and even sugarcane straws were being utilized for making this. When we talk about the wood and wood fibers, they have a broad lamina with a wider circular orifices surrounded by bordered bits. When it comes to the textile fibers, they are very long and very narrow lumen. And when it comes to the starch fibers, these fibers are epidermal cells and cylindrical or spherical cells. These fibers are smaller and slender. Detection of sizing agents. As many sizing agents are added to the paper for different purposes, so their detection may help us to identify the paper involved in crime. There are some of the methods which can be used to detect some of the sizing agents present in the paper. First, gelatin, which is one of the sizing agent in the paper, can be identified by a chemical reaction utilizing galactonic acid. Then rosin is one of sizing agents which can be detected in the paper utilizing saturated solution of sucrose, and even gelatin can also be identified utilizing Million's reagent. And when it comes to the starch, which can be identified using diluted solution of iodine. So far, this video discussion has been provided you a basic information about the examination of paper, how the different types of papers has been prepared from the time to time, and how the pulps are different from one to the another paper, how the sizing agents play a major role in preparation of paper, all these things, and examination of appearance of paper, chemical examination, and even when it comes to the sizing agents, there are different examinations which we have discussed. So far now we come to one conclusion of the examination of paper discussion. So I conclude with remarkable words that document is one of the most important area of analysis in forensic science. So the papers which can be yielding more important and valuable evidences in the forensic field, in examination, and even in court room also. Thank you for watching the video.